First a group of Chinese laborers came,
Right.
and they were known as coolies.
Yes.
And they were from Indianapolis,
Yeah.
200. Then I think about a month later, 200 more showed up as laborers. And I want to mention also that the Augusta Chronicle and the people in Augusta thought that it would not be a success because they were looking at Chinese people. They were small in stature. They were comparing them with the Irish. But it showed them that the Chinese were more tenacious, they were tougher, they did as much work as the Irish, or even better. And also that the Chinese did not end up drunk on the weekend. So they were dependable. So right away, the Augusta Chronicle changed their attitude about the Chinese laborers. They were what's the word? Work ethics. Work ethics. They worked, they received their money. They knew that in order to receive their gold money, they were paid in gold. I forgot how many ounces of gold.
Wow.
But they knew that to receive their pay, they had to work. See, that's something that's not present with all kinds of people. So right away, the Chinese people were hit.
Do you, so this is on the Augusta Chronicle. They have articles about this.
Yes.
Okay.
So the newspapers begin to change their attitude. They had a negative attitude at first, and then they became very positive. You know, gosh, these people, they really produce. You know, they show up for work every time, on time, work a full day. And not like the previous laborers that they probably had, which were probably African Americans or Irish. Although they did not think it would work, it worked out great, despite the fact that they were so small in stature, but their work ethics really made a difference. And you know, that's what the Chinese in Augusta are known for, work ethics. Because when you hear of a Chinese person in business in Augusta, it's always a positive.
There was a time for the Chinese workers in the West Coast that they were boycotted or because they had taken away the job opportunity. Did the Chinese in Augusta experience that?
That was not a situation because the reason they were here to begin with is because the labor market was not there. They did not have folks available to do this kind of work. The Irish, they found, were not that dependable, and of course, the slaves were not here. The slaves had all been traveled up north because of the emancipation.
So what do you know of what happened after the canal expansion has ended?
That expansion process took 73, 75, 2 years. They got the job done in 2 years. And the Indianapolis group moved the crew probably to another site to take on another project. Meanwhile, some of those persons stayed. And I believe that one particular group or family, no, I shouldn't say family, persons, opened a tea garden on Broad Street. That was the only area of Augusta that they were familiar with because the canal work was mostly along the Broad Street area. Later on now, the Chinese, as the numbers increased in the Augusta area, they realized that the African American population was in another section of Augusta. Their needs for groceries and items like that were not met. So that's when the Chinese started opening the grocery stores in the black neighborhoods on the corners. All of a sudden, that was very successful. So then most of the Chinese in Augusta, I would say 100% of the Chinese in Augusta, operated grocery stores located on corners in the African American sections of Augusta. And that's my heritage. My father moved here from New York. He was a laundryman, and he came to Augusta because of a relative here. And my father's goal, like all the other Chinese merchants, was, I do not want my children to be in the grocery business, because you have to think about it. These persons, without even a high school education, were successful in the grocery business, and with an education, they should be better, which was the goal. Just like my family, everybody had to have a college education. All the Chinese people in Augusta, they had to have a college education. The theme, the goal at that particular time now was that we get an education and go back to China to serve our country. The reason for that was none of the jobs, those types of jobs, were available in the Southeast to Chinese persons. So there was no, that was the only recourse, is to go back to China. That was my parents' thinking. But during the period of time, now, things have changed. After the war, things have changed. Just like the Exclusion Act was repealed in 1943, the Chinese Exclusion Act was repealed. And that opened up the sentiments, different sentiments towards the Chinese. So I would say very few Chinese persons educated here had the goal of returning to China, going to China. That was not my case. I mean, that was my case. I never even considered being an engineer like my dad had planned for me and go back to China. I wanted to go into dentistry. I started my practice here and had no problems getting patients. In other words, the Augusta people have really been kind to the Chinese people in Augusta all along. Ever since 1927, when this organization began, they, excuse me, they were advised by many of the Chinese, many of the Caucasian officials, people in government. Now, the first thing you need to do is charter your organization.
The Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association.
Right. They were advised by some of the most respected Augusta people to this, and like Kathy and I were mentioning the other day, the Chinese Association, CCBA, at all of its events, they would always invite the city dignitaries because they were key officials that had a hand in developing the Chinese group, CCBA, to what it is today. And it's somewhat sad now that our organization, we do not invite any of the politicians because we pride ourselves in being apolitical, non-political. But then we should recognize some of these folks. They were so nice to get us started.
And I think the Chinese here, nowadays, we owe the hardworking work ethics of the people back in 1873.
Absolutely, absolutely. They established the groundwork. They established or created the reputation that we now enjoy. And see, we can proudly say that the Chinese community in Augusta is truly a microcosm of the Augusta population. We have people in dentistry, in medicine, the head of the radiology department at Georgia Health Sciences, Chinese person, the head of microbiology at the VA Center, Chinese person, and the Chinese in leadership positions all over.
And professional.
Beg pardon?
And professional.
Oh, and professions, absolutely. And you know, the Chinese people in Augusta, we give back to the city. Just like my dentist, who is Dr. Grant Liu, is one of the biggest giver to the alumni fund of the dental school here. And that shows that, you know, we or he is so appreciative of what Augusta and the school has done for him that he's giving back. And that's the philosophy that exists with the Chinese people here in Augusta. In fact, the Arts and the Hearts of Augusta, which is an annual event that features all the different ethnic groups in Augusta, is a festival. It's headed by a Chinese person, which shows you that the Chinese assume leadership, you know, responsibilities. And we should, because Augusta's been nice to us.
Would you like to say something about what you wish and hope for the next generation American Chinese here?
Well, to continue on the path that we are headed into now, we have plans of expansion. We bought the parish house next door. We are waiting for a permit to demolish it for parking area. We are thinking about buying the lot next door that will expand our area and having developed as a recreation area for the CCBA. And
You have done a lot here, and the footage that we've seen with the calligraphy, the dance, the you know, that you taught the next generation of the Chinese culture, how you kind of pass on the culture to them.
that's an attempt. You know, although we assimilated pretty well, we are third and fourth generation. We don't want to lose the traditional heritage.